Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. Today I have invited my co-star, Miss Megan Johansen, to join me because today she is going to talk about her life dealing with somebody or helping somebody that has had major anxiety and depression. So oftentimes on Mental Health Mondays we talk about symptoms, what causes depression, anxiety, what can that person do? But half of the equation is actually the person that has to go along with the person with depression, anxiety. So that's why we have Megan here today. We are going to talk about her experience and her tips and tricks that she did while she was managing me during my episodes for the last 15 years. So you guys out there, whether you have anxiety or depression or not, you most likely know somebody or have maybe been around somebody and maybe not known how to act or what to say. So that's what we're going to get from Miss Megan tonight is her, through trial and error, 15 years, you're going to do some bad things, you're going to do some great things. And I honestly...
Lots of hanging on for dear life.
Yes. I honestly can say that without Megan by my side, I would not be here for sure. I would have checked out of life a long time ago. But Megan and my kids are the two solid reasons why I'm able to sit in front of you guys tonight. So, Megan... What is it like having your husband have severe anxiety and depression for so long?
Well, I think it's different for everybody because there's different varying levels of how deep your depression or how strong your anxiety and panic attacks are. When we first got married, it wasn't hardly Kai could kind of notice, but
I hit it a lot.
He hit it very, very well, and because I wasn't very well versed in it, I didn't really pick up on a lot of it, and it wasn't until a little bit later in our marriage when it got a little bit more pronounced and you couldn't really hide it around me anymore and I got to know you really well.
Yeah.
Well, that, and I think with all the medications they kept adding on, you just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So it's scary when you're the caregiver of someone who's struggling with a mental illness because oftentimes you see the reality of life and they don't, and their reality is very skewed, and it's scary because you're at least I would always try and remind him of the good and how well we were doing. And
so she brings up a really good point, so I'm going to stop you right there. Megan did a good job of being a caregiver for me because she did remind me of the things that life was. People, or that makes life worth living. People that have anxiety and depression, our vision, our ability to see what's around us gets incredibly small, where it actually feels like you're trying to look through a straw. So you're there, physically we're here, but mentally and emotionally we're not. So I like what Megan said is to be a good caregiver or to help somebody, just help remind them about the things that are worth living for. And you don't have to come out and say, I'm worth living for or the kids are worth living for. We know that. And then sometimes she did. So I like that. And when she said that, I really appreciated, hey, you may feel like the world's coming to an end, but also remember, you like to go fishing or you like to go catch the ball with the kids.
Oftentimes I would even say, I would ask questions. I'd see you were struggling. I'd say, how are you feeling? Like, let's do a reality check. How are you feeling?
And then I would say, I feel like somebody's about to murder me and I need to run for my life. Literally, that's what a panic attack feels like. Mm-hmm. It feels like somebody's just about to push you off a cliff.
Yeah.
So you wake up feeling that way, and then you brush your teeth feeling that way, and then you try to kiss your kids and your wife goodbye, and you feel like you're about to be pushed off a cliff.
Yeah, and so when we would do the reality checks, he would tell me, well, this is how I'm feeling, and I'd be like, okay, well, I understand that you're feeling that way. That must be extremely scary. Always validate first, because those feelings are very real. And just because that situation isn't currently happening, like that you're not about to die, that doesn't mean that that's not how your body is feeling. And so you always want to validate their feelings first, because I think that is the most important for people with mental health, because they feel like they're going crazy. I mean, I could only imagine having that feeling all the time. You would feel crazy.
Yeah.
And how do you know what reality is? So I'd always validate your feelings first, or at least try to. I don't know if I always did a very good job at that. But then I would say, but here's the reality. Today, this is all that's expected of you. Or this is what you've got going for you. Or nobody's out to get you. We all love you. Nobody hates you. Or if it was a situation he was stressed out about, I'd be like, all right, let's talk through this. What are you worried about in this situation? Okay, well, this is something you can't control, or this is something you can control. This is how we can control it. So you always want to try and help them through as best they can each tiny little scenario of life, because it can just get overwhelming. I mean, life is overwhelming in general, and then add mental illness to it. So, and then not understanding what is real, what is not.
Here's a question. How could you tell that I was struggling?
You'd be very quiet. Now, everybody has their different ways in how they react to their emotions and their feelings with panic and anxiety, and you always just went really quiet. If I would ask him a question, sometimes he wouldn't even be there to be able to answer me or hear that I'd asked him a question. If I have to ask it more than once or touch him and get his attention, and then it's a one-word answer.
I'm still trying to fight all the demons in my head, let alone have the energy to focus on what's around me.
Right. And so then I could tell he's struggling. And then that's when I would stop whatever I was doing and be like, I can see you're struggling. What's going on?
How would, instead of going quiet, I know I had the opposite, where I was yelling and violent
well, those were
sometimes.
when you were in your extreme panic attacks. I mean, those are obvious to recognize, but I think the biggest thing when someone's having that form of a panic attack, where they're crying or screaming or whatever it be, and it's just so erratic, you can't take anything that they say or anything that they do in that moment personally.
Yeah.
Because
imagine somebody drowning in the ocean, and lifeguards, you guys are training. Megan's an ex-lifeguard. When a person is in a state of panic, they don't rationalize things. So oftentimes the lifeguards that show up to save them from drowning, the victim can actually drown the lifeguard because they're just so out of control. And so I think Megan described that perfectly. Once you can no longer suppress the emotion or what you're fearful about, sometimes the last thing you just want to do is purge it all out, and it comes out in a bit of rage and violence. And
I wouldn't say violence.
I mean, like maybe punching a wall or a door.
Oh, I guess.
Never like. Fortunately, I was never tempted to hurt my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
Some people are, and so I try not to judge that.
But that's not okay.
It's not okay, but I can,
And that's one thing I always want to bring up is, with someone struggling with mental illness, it's still not okay to treat other people like dirt. It's not okay to be violent. It's not okay to punch walls and punch doors. That doesn't make the behavior okay. And I never, ever, ever excused it. So if things ever got to a point where, he might have punched a wall or said something that wasn't very nice, I didn't take it personally, one. But two, once he calmed down, I would say, hey,
you need to make this right.
This was not acceptable.
Yeah.
And you need to fix it. And whether that was to apologize to me or whatever it be, fix the hole in the wall.
I'm really good at drywall. I'm really good.
But I think the other thing is Brock was always trying to do better. He was always trying to get help. He was always, in constant reflection of how he could handle each situation better. And because he was always doing that, it was easier for me to help and go along with you and love you and not run for the hills. But if someone is struggling with a mental illness and they are being abusive and they're not seeking help, and that's not okay. There is no excuse for abuse.
It's appropriate to hold them to a standard.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect them to, like, build a rocket ship, but at least say, hey, you gotta at least be able to treat people like this, okay? We don't expect you to be, a stand-up comedian and entertain the crowds, but you at least have to be able to treat people with respect, because you may be running from demons, but that doesn't mean you get to tear everybody apart around you. So I like that. Even in my states where logically I couldn't really think, I could still spiritually recognize that she was requesting a very normal and a very standard set of rules, and I always try to stick with them. So let's talk about medication. So from an outsider point of view, I know what it felt like to be on them, but how did medications affect me?
Well, one, you couldn't remember anything that you were taking. And so I had to be in charge of the medications. Medication supplement schedules, everything that had to do with your daily life, I had to be in charge because you couldn't remember. So that was difficult, but needed. So when you were on your medications, I could just tell they weren't really working, and you just seemed out of it. He slept a lot, and just kind of zombie, I guess, would be how I would describe. Like, just his regular state was just very chill. And I didn't like it. I knew he needed to be off of them, but I didn't know what the alternatives were. I knew they weren't helping, and I knew that they were awful, and they were poisoning you, and they were just making everything worse. But I couldn't fix it. And so all I could do was just be making sure that he was taking them on his regular schedule. And it was very easy for me I had to learn your cues, like how you reacted when you went off of them. If you forgot a dose, every morning had to remember to ask, like, hey, did you take your meds? I had a pill bottle thing all set out where you had your morning meds and your evening meds, morning meds and evening meds. And if I didn't ask him, I'd at least go check the med box and see if they were empty. That
is crucial. Because like Megan said, I didn't have a memory, and so we would always go back to the box, and that was for sure like, yes or no.
And even while you were healing and you were switching over, stopping the medications and switching over to supplements, I still have to remind you, did you take your supplements in the morning? And now I don't anymore, because you're pretty good at it. But at the beginning, his memory still wasn't very good, so I still had to be the keeper of all things. Did you take them? Did you take them? Did you take them? And then I would say the other things that I always had to make sure you were doing was doing things to promote those hormones to work as well as they could. So like this list right here, like going for a walk, I had to make sure that you were relatively eating healthy. I mean, clearly I didn't know the wellness way, but we tried to eat healthy. I tried to make you do meditation.
Meditation is very hard for somebody with anxiety and depression, because the last thing we want to do is think our thoughts, because that's what we're running from 24/7. So to make us stop and to make us think about that, ooh, that's torture, baby. That was rough.
I made sure that we did social gatherings, so we went out
which
with
I
friends.
hated.
He hated it.
Hated it.
But I knew that you need that. You can't just stay at home and do nothing. You can't go to work and stay home and sit in your dark bedroom, which is all he wanted to do. So
Sounds
at least
at
twice, and I compromised. I wanted to be out every day. But I just knew that you needed to get out at least twice a month.
So when I was at my worst, like when I was having bad episodes, what were your go-to, like, break them out of this? Like, what can people do if their husband or girlfriend or anything like that are in a really bad episode. What did you do for me?
Episode as in like your panic attacks or your
Sure.
depression?
Yeah, like I'm melting down, things are getting bad. How? Because it's all about redirecting energy, right? Because a guy or a gal that's anxious or depressed, we're imploding, we're crushing in on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if Megan, I remember she would do a good job of refocusing my thought and then my action. What were some of those things? Like you mentioned going on a walk. What else did we do?
If I could tell you were about to have a panic attack and you're just acting antsy, I would try and get you to do something with me. Either go for a walk or play with the dog or play with the kids or something to kind of change your mind frame. But if you were in the middle of a full-blown panic attack, sometimes there's not really much you can do except for just hold them. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes if I found him, on the couch or wandering around the house just in a full-blown panic attack, I would take him either onto the couch or into the bedroom, and I would just hold him, and I'd squeeze him really tight, and the whole time I would just positive affirmations like, you're okay, you're safe, I'm here, this really sucks, I know what you're feeling, I understand that you probably feel this and this and this, but in reality, you're going to be okay, your heart isn't going to stop, you're going to be just fine. It might take an hour, it might take 3 before this anxiety attack passes, but it will pass. Mm-hmm. And that's all you can do. Some things I learned, if I could get it soon enough, I feel like our massager, the one that vibrates really well.
I like that, yeah.
I would put that right here at the base of his neck and just kind of hold it there, and it would kind of distract your brain a little bit with the vibration. I would also try and give you a supplement, or at the time we did Benadryl, but don't do Benadryl. We use California Poppy now, or Kava, at the beginning when you were still having those, to just kind of calm down everything, and I would try and get you to take a nap afterwards because they're draining.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Just constantly reminding them that what they're feeling, while yes, they're really feeling it, it's not real.
Yep, it's very true.
Anything else?
Let's think. Talked about the meds, talked about, setting the standard, saying, hey, there's certain rules you need to follow, which is, treat me with respect, treat the kids with respect. Those are all important.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah. What if, because a lot of people, like you mentioned, we don't want to go outside. We don't want to have to pretend like we're happy when we're dying on the inside. So social gatherings is the worst. Especially like church or family get-togethers.
Well, we still went to church every week.
Yeah.
I considered that a social outing.
Yeah, that's more than I can handle sometimes.
Even if sometimes all we could make it was just to the first little bit.
That's a good question. So once we did get out, there's definitely times where I had to turn to Megan and said, I can't do this anymore.
Yep.
We gotta go. Like I'm about to spill out.
And you have to be understanding of that. And so while it's important to try and still get out and do things with friends and have hobbies so you're not just completely secluded, because, we need people in our lives.
Right.
You also have to understand that if they say they need to go, they need to go. And so always listen to that, And even sometimes if it was right before we were supposed to leave and I had to call friends and cancel.
Yeah, we had to cancel a few times.
But find friends and that understand.
Yeah, that's important too.
So finding friends and you have to be able to be open and honest with them. And the hard part is getting the person who's suffering with the mental illness to be on board with you sharing a little bit of what you guys are going through. Because for the first little bit of our marriage, he didn't want me to tell anybody what he was suffering with.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you kind of perceive it. You perceive yourself as a weak individual that can't cope with just normal life, and so...
But that's not true at all. I think people who suffer with mental illness are some of the strongest people I know.
Yeah.
I mean, to deal with that all day, every day, and still live life. that's strength.
Yep.
So, and I think more and more people are starting to realize that.
Yeah.
And so we thank heavens have some really, really great friends who are very understanding, and they know exactly what we were going through at the time. And anytime we had to cancel, I just told them the truth. I said, hey, Brock's not feeling very well right now, so we're gonna have to stay home.
Yeah.
Or if we were out in the middle of a night and we'd just gone to dinner, we were about to go to a movie or do something, and he's like, no, I gotta go. We could just tell them that, like, hey, he's not doing very well. We're just gonna have to call it an early night. Yeah,
so we would plan something like a dinner and a movie, and then 30 minutes to an hour in a restaurant for somebody with anxiety and depression.
Especially if it's a very loud restaurant.
It's tremendous. There's times where we would go to a restaurant and I had to cover my ears and just close my eyes because the outside stimulus was just way too much. So it's nice to have friends that understand, but also where you do go, make sure it's for me,
calming.
Noises were intense.
Yeah.
Last thing we're going to talk about is we've talked about all the dark stuff for the most part. What was it? How did I end up here now? That's a big question, but I'm not that person anymore.
Prayer.
A lot of prayer. So there's definitely a spiritual component to this.
So
being able to hold on to something that's bigger than you.
I want to tell a little bit of his story because I don't know if he ever will. So I mean, you were diagnosed with this the month we got married. So that's almost 15 years now.
Yep.
And he'd been struggling with it for a little bit longer than that. Since high school, I believe.
Yep.
And it just got harder and harder and harder.
Well, I didn't have anybody that helped me identify what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was going crazy and that the world was out to get me, but nobody around me picked up on that cue. And so I didn't learn what anxiety and depression was until I went to a medical doctor and said, this is what I'm thinking and feeling. What is this? Am I normal or not? And so you guys can help people just by maybe mentioning it, because I was blind. I had no idea.
And so, I mean, we went the medical route. That wasn't the best option, but you don't really know what else to do because there's not answers out there.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we went to the psychiatrists, and we went to MDs, and we went to lots of different types of therapies, and some helped a little bit more than others, and some not at all, and none of the medications worked, and it just kind of slowly built and built and built to this point where about 7 years ago it just got bad. Like bad. Like I was so worried about you all the time. And I just prayed constantly, and I'm sure you did too.
Well, yeah, you start praying, and then you start losing hope.
Yeah.
You start hating God more than loving Him, because what loving God would put a person through such misery and hell.
That's what you feel like at the time?
Oh yeah. I got real angry and bitter because no human being deserves to go through that.
It's hard. And it's hard to watch you deal with something like that, especially when you just feel so helpless. So I prayed, and I kept getting that same answer, especially not this year, but the year before. I just kept getting, wait. I'm like, wait for what? I'm like, I know the answer's in his diet, but I can't figure it out. And I said, just please help me. And I kept looking for answers and looking for answers and looking for answers, and I just kept getting the same response to every prayer. Wait, he'll be healed. Wait. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I didn't believe it.
And I had to keep telling him that. I said, I'm praying, and and Heavenly Father's going to heal you, but He says to wait.
Wait until I'm dead?
And I said, I don't know how long, I don't know for what, but He says to wait. And then when our friend started working for the Wellness Way, I can't remember how long ago, about a year ago. And I was watching her, I just got this feeling like, oh, that might be the answer. And I went to him, and I said, hey, you gotta look into this. And he wouldn't. He was like, no, nothing will help.
No, you give up hope at a certain point.
And so then I started, I
can't
started praying,
blame you.
all right, I think I found the answer. Is this it? And if it is, how do I get him on board? And so then it just started this very slow process of about 8 months because I kept begging him to quit his current job. I knew that that's not where he was supposed to be. And it wasn't a very good work environment, and it was causing a lot more problems than it needed to. It was not very awesome. And I kept begging him and begging him and begging him to quit and find something else. And he kept telling me that if he quit, he'd just give up chiropractic completely. And I was like, but that's your gift, man. You can't give it up. You can't. You were born to do this. Especially with this whole nutrition and now what we found through the Wellness Way. He's always been drawn to that. And I knew that if he could get back to doing something like that again, he'd be happy. And then when I saw Shannon starting the Wellness Way, I was like, that's it. And so about 8 months it took for you of me constantly praying and you to slowly realize that you absolutely hated your job. And on my birthday this year in February, he called me and said, that's it. They had done something else. I can't remember what anymore.
They fired a really good coworker.
Oh, okay. And he said, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I'm not staying here one more minute. I'm putting in my notice. And I was so happy, even though we had no backup. I had no idea
COVID was just...
No, we didn't even know about it yet. Hardly. We slightly kind of heard about it a little bit, but it wasn't like a thing here yet.
Right.
Yeah, and so
just at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, the end of February is when you put in your notice, and that's usually a 2-month-long notice.
Yeah.
Some things went down when he put that in, and at the beginning of March, right a week before the lockdowns hit, they said, you don't have to come back to finish out your time here. And we still didn't know what we were going to be doing.
We just knew that we had to change something, and so
I begged him one more time to call the Wellness Way. And I think at that point, you were out of any other option. So you were like, fine.
Well, God didn't give us any options.
Exactly.
And so it's like, man, God, you've been beating me up my whole life.
Well, not him.
Well, you know.
I know what it
This is
like.
what you think in your head, right?
Yeah.
Like, you keep closing doors on my face.
Yeah.
And I keep falling downstairs. And, there's a draft in the house,
Yeah.
So, like, everything just stinks all the time.
Yeah.
At least when you're having anxiety and depression. Like, even the uber wealthy people that have everything taken care of, this disease can literally destroy them and have them kill themselves. So, it's not really the house or the car or the money in the bank account. This disease will straight up murder you if you don't, if you can't
treat it properly.
If you can't treat it properly. So Megan brought up a good point. At that point, when we were having one of the biggest trials in our life, we were directed towards the Wellness Way, and I started applying their principles and looking at the body differently. And because, what's the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, with my anxiety and depression, we went the medical route for 15 years.
I will say
all
we had
the time.
already, previous to this, the year before, I had really realized that all the medications you were on weren't helping. And they were actually doing a lot more harm than good. And we had already gotten permission from his doctor at that point to start weaning him off of them. And so we had already weaned you off of at least half of them at that point. And so then we were just continuing that to get you off the rest of those medications, which we were able to do pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then starting applying the Wellness Way just made it even faster. And then I am still shocked every day at who you are, how amazing you're doing. Like, you haven't had a panic attack in forever. Like, and he was having those severely, daily, severe panic attacks.
Yep.
And they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's just through fixing your gut health and supporting your body and healing.
Yeah.
If you would have told me that last year.
No, that couldn't be it.
No.
That's too basic. It needs to be way complex and nothing you can reach.
Yeah.
But the truth is, now that we know, that we can share it with you guys, and that's why I air my dirty laundry in front of y'all, is because I don't want anybody, no matter if you're a good guy or a bad guy, you don't deserve that at all.
I struggled with it for like a couple months after surgery, but not anywhere as severe as you did. And just feeling just that little bit of anxiety after surgery for, what was it, 3 months?
Yeah.
4 months, where I would have panic attacks.
It's enough to scare your socks off, huh?
I was like, I don't know how you deal with this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you live.
Yeah. So the blessing out of all of this, there's many blessings, obviously, but the biggest one for me is knowing that I'm in control. That's the scariest feeling, is feeling like you are just going to get beat up every single day and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So that's blessing number one, is I feel like I'm the captain again. And then two, I don't have to put my wife through this anymore. She's earned all of her bonus points to earn her spot in heaven.
And it's really weird because like now I don't have to keep track of your medications. I don't have to keep track of like so much stuff for you. I'm like, what do I do with myself?
Well, the third one is that. The third one blessing out of all of this is I can teach my children how not to go down this path again, and how to actually heal their body so that they don't have to end up like their dad was. So when I was a child in high school, my dad at the age of around 55 had triple bypass surgery. So I thought, I was still in high school when I had to go to the hospital and, check my dad out at the, recovery department and stuff. But that had a huge impact on me because I was fearful for a very long time that was my destiny. I was going to end up on the operating table with my heart exposed because, medical will teach you that this is all genetic, and if your dad had it or your mom had it, that means you have to have it. So that's what I thought. So when I had anxiety and depression, having children terrified me because I didn't want them to live what I was living. And so that's the biggest blessing for me, is knowing that it stops with me. And my children do not have to walk that path. My grandchildren don't have to. So that personally for me is a huge blessing. But then at the same time, Megan and I, with the experience that we shared with you guys today, we have a tremendous influx of people with anxiety and depression coming in to the office because they've heard our story. So that's a cherry on top, really, is to be able to help everybody else now. Yeah. So not only are we blessed with our family being protected through this, now we can actually offer that to other people as well. So
it's huge. I mean, I feel so bad for everybody who has had to deal with this, but I just want to scream it from the rooftops, like, you can heal. Like, you don't have to feel like that anymore. You don't have to be on all these medications that do nothing. You don't have to go down this road anymore. You can actually fix it. Like, that's huge. And to give someone that hope when there isn't any, and at first they might not believe it.
Nope.
But what did I say to you?
I didn't believe anything would work.
But I said, hey, we're going to try
Even
this.
Even as I was swallowing the pills, I'm like, this doesn't work.
But what did I say? I said, try it.
Try it, you'll like it.
Try it, you'll like it. All right. That's what we say to our kids when we're trying to get them to eat food.
Eat your vegetables. Try it. You'll like it. Yeah.
But I told you, I said, we've tried everything else. This is our last thing to try. If this doesn't work, fine.
Yep.
But you can't knock it till you try it. So at least give me a few months.
That's it.
So you did. And here you are.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm
so
happy.
what are these 10 things here?
Oh, we're out of time.
Okay.
We'll talk about a few other areas of our life and our experience at our next episode of Mental Health Mondays.
On Monday.
So thank you guys for joining us this evening. And hope you guys
Yeah.
found this information to be enlightening. And I think that's what life is.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, we're just a bunch of little people walking around, kind of running into each other, transferring experience, transferring emotion, and that's what makes the human species so unique, is our ability to transfer information and energy to one another. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you guys some information and some energy to help motivate you guys if you're in the same position that we've been in for way too long. At least you know that there's a life raft out there. There's a buoy out there that's worth clinging on to until you guys can get up on your own feet like I've been able to. So we'll continue talking about this. If this is something that's interesting, leave a comment below. If you have questions, leave a comment below. That way next week we can answer those and maybe even dig into other areas as well.
Or share the video with other people that struggle with this, or even just share our number on our website and have them call in, because
it's worth it.
Hope is needed.
Oh yeah, the world needs hope, doesn't it?
Especially this year.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. I'll see you next week.